It's a pleasure to be here with my longtime friend, Paco. I've known Paco since our days back in PeopleSoft. We were there as young kids, as they say. So it's great to be doing this special update to the PeopleSoft customers together and going through some of the top questions that we've collected from our great customers on what they want to hear about moving to the cloud. I'm Chris Leone. I'm the Senior Vice President of Application Development for our Human Capital Management Cloud products. I'm also representing PeopleSoft with Paco here, as well as our eBusiness Suite HCM products. So with that, let me turn it over to Paco to introduce himself. You all know Paco.
we know each other for a long time, Chris, when you can say my last name without having to like stumble through it, which you only get after many years. Anyway, thanks for the introduction. Good to be here. Paco everyone. Worked with Chris for a long time at PeopleSoft, came over to Oracle in, I guess, 2005, 15 years ago now, and have been responsible for the PeopleSoft products from a development standpoint for the last 12 or 13 years. So glad to be here and glad to be actually talking. I think we've been these two separate groups for a long, or at least from the outside looking in, it seemed like we were two separate groups. It's good to show people that we've been working together the whole time, actually never stopped.
Exactly. Yeah. And some other time we'll tell you about all the stories that we have of the past, which are super fun. We definitely go back a long time. Okay. So we're going to jump right in. Like I said, we've collected a number of kind of top questions from our great PeopleSoft customers about moving to the cloud, what it means to them, and we're gonna have a kind of unplugged conversation and kind of answer these questions. So first one that we get asked a lot is, Paco, you're responsible for all the PeopleSoft applications. You have been since the inception. In your words, what should PeopleSoft customers be thinking about moving to the cloud?
Yeah, so it's been interesting because we've been here through an evolution, right? And what we were all collectively telling our customers and recommending 10 years ago is different than it is today. And so our story and our message and what we really believe is the right thing for customers has shifted over the last several years. And one of the things that shifted that some customers asked me about, and people on my team asked me about, that we're a little concerned about, that several years ago we shifted a little bit from saying, look, it's your choice, and ultimately it's their choice what they do. And Oracle's, we told them in 2006 that they would have that choice, and they continue to have that choice. But what shifted a few years ago was that what I've started to tell customers is that it's our belief that eventually all enterprise applications will be delivered via cloud. It may take a long time. There may be some enterprises or some government agencies that don't do it for quite a few years still. But over time, it will shift to cloud because it's a more effective model in terms of software delivery and maintenance. What I tell the PeopleSoft customers is, look, yes, we're going to support you on PeopleSoft. Yes, we're continuing to invest. Yes, it's your choice. However, if you're a steward of your company's applications and you have a responsibility to be looking out both in the short term and the long term in terms of what's best for your company, your institution, then you need to be looking at cloud applications. You need to be understanding what that means, where the value is, and what the business case is, and what the path to the cloud looks like. Whether that's everything moves in the next year and a half, or whether that's you start moving soon and move very slowly over time, or incrementally adopt. You've got to start, and you've got to understand it. And just because we're continuing to invest in PeopleSoft doesn't mean that you can just ignore what's happening in the cloud, because it's here to stay for a lot of good reasons. So that's what I tell them. They don't always like to hear that, but I think more and more they're becoming comfortable. They understand that now, and they don't feel as threatened by that as they probably did several years ago.
I hear that a lot about the level of investment. So you touched on that a little bit, and I've heard a couple different perspectives when we talk about the level of investment. I've heard, look, we're just not investing enough in PeopleSoft. We need to invest a lot more. I've also heard the other extreme, like, hey, if you really want people to go to the cloud, why are you pouring so many resources into PeopleSoft? So I've I always kind of like the Goldilocks, it can't be, we're not too hot, not too cold. But what is your perspective? How do you think the investment level has been and is in PeopleSoft?
Yeah, and it's when we came in. So when you and I both came into Oracle in 2005, we were public about that we were going to shut down the PeopleSoft application, stop supporting them by 2013. And we went through a lot of kind of almost DNA level changes at Oracle, as you know, about really understanding what's important in this market and how do we build trusting customer relationships so that we can get more market share over time with our customers. They've got to trust that we're going to support their business, both current and in the future. And so when we shifted our strategy in 2006 to what we call Applications Unlimited, we said, we don't know when we're going to stop. We don't have any plans of stopping investment. We know that as long as there's customers that are running their businesses on our applications, we've got to continue to invest to support them across the dimensions of investments. At that time in 2006, I never dreamt that we'd be sitting here in 2020 saying that we're continuing to do that. We're doing effectively exactly what we said we would do.
Yeah.
We have, the PeopleSoft support right now, timeline goes out through 2031, and that's not an end date. That's just, we're going to continue to invest. And I think this question of how much investment is it the right investment, if you look at the PeopleSoft products in 2006 when we started this, and you look at the PeopleSoft products today, we've fundamentally shifted, right? I mean, we've gone from major application upgrades every few years to a continuous model with selective adoption on images. We've gone to being able to run PeopleSoft on the cloud and the fluid UI, just a ton of investment. So I look at that question and would answer it as, the question is not how much investment we're putting in. The question is, what are we doing with the investment that we have? And is that adding value to the PeopleSoft customers? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. I mean, the reason we have a lot of PeopleSoft, so many PeopleSoft customers still, is because we've added value all the way. And the flip side of that is, if we had not done that, maybe we'd have a few more customers on the cloud, but we wouldn't necessarily have customers on the cloud that were as happy, because they would have left PeopleSoft because they were so unhappy with the investment. So I feel like we've made a pretty good balance of the strategic investments in our cloud applications. We've been pretty clear about that. Yes, we have more investment in our cloud applications, but I do feel like we're investing enough in PeopleSoft to make this a viable solution for them, so that when they move to the cloud, they're not fleeing a burning platform, right? And that's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting to kind of balance, what's enough investment and are we having an impact? And, coming from PeopleSoft, I always feel that we do need to support them. We had invested over the years. I remember fighting the good fight back in the early 2000s, and we feel obligated. We made a commitment to them to continue to invest, and I fundamentally believe we've lived up to that commitment, as we know that the cloud is the future for customers running their business. We've lived up to that platform, and you've done a great job representing it. But I think Oracle as a whole has lived up to that commitment, and I'm proud that we've done it. Okay, so we hear cloud, and it can be I won't say nebulous term. I think people understand a little bit more now, but what options do PeopleSoft customers have, right? We know what software as a service is. We know what kind of hosting is, and we have some Oracle Cloud infrastructure. And certainly we offer both, and they have different levels of benefits. What is your perspective on kind of, Oracle Cloud infrastructure and how we can manage, the current PeopleSoft system in a better way versus, software as a service and what we're doing with our HCM cloud platform?
So we definitely view the kind of the destination at some point in time for customers to be software as a service applications, and for a lot of reasons that we can get into in a little bit. But that's certainly the destination. And what we're doing with this Oracle Cloud infrastructure investment, both in terms of the infrastructure itself and the investment in PeopleSoft to run on it, is it's very similar to the rest of the investments we're making in PeopleSoft, which is how do we how do we unlock as much value as we can for customers while they're on PeopleSoft still, for them to lower costs, increase agility, and effectively be more successful on the solution while they're running it. That said, there's fundamental, as you know, there's fundamental differences between SaaS and OCI, or running PeopleSoft on OCI. And the most fundamental is, ultimately, if the application is running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it's still the customer's responsibility to manage it, to patch it, to do people tools upgrades. It's their responsibility. Even if they ask us to host it on OCI, it's still ultimately their responsibility, with us, doing a lot of that work for them. That's all different. I mean, that's all different with SaaS, right? I mean, they don't have to worry about whether their hardware needs to get refreshed. They don't need to know if their Oracle database has been patched. They don't even really have to know if there's an Oracle database underneath it. It doesn't matter to them, right? They're getting a functional solution, and it's completely our responsibility to keep it current, keep it valuable, make sure any updates are made seamlessly, that there's no security vulnerability, all those things that customers today have to be responsible for, they're not responsible for with SaaS. And what that means to the line of business is not just that it's lower cost and easier, but that you have an application that in a lot of ways stays ahead. The capabilities of our application generally are ahead of where our customers are in terms of what they need. So all they need to do is adopt it from a business standpoint. They really never have to worry about the technology associated with it. And so that's the big difference I see. The OCI, PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, is a step on the path if they're going to stay on PeopleSoft, but it's not a destination long term from an application standpoint in terms of what we would see. It's part maybe a way of getting there.
Yep. Yeah, I'll give a couple additional, there's a couple questions around PeopleSoft customizations versus what you can do in the cloud, and a little bit on updates and upgrades. And you touched on a little bit of that. Yeah. And I know you have a strategy on the PeopleSoft side to kind of minimize how often they have to, take updates and those type of things. But since there's a question specifically around kind of PeopleSoft customizations and what was not only done but encouraged, and then kind of how we manage it on the cloud, I'll take that one and kind of give my perspective, and you can jump in. We've all lived it. But I remember back in the day, I remember release 8, no code on the client, and I remember App Designer and going out and talking to prospects about, look how great it is. You can customize this application, and you can build extension pages, and that's what we believed, and that's what customers loved about PeopleSoft, was the ability to simply extend the application and customize it. And I think we all learned over time that while customizations allow you to get closer to really, really tailoring it to what the business wants, managing those and maintaining those as we have to put out fixes, and we're putting out fixes and testing things the way that we've configured the system and the way that the standard product works, and then you have to adjust those to any customizations. We learned that there's a cost associated with that. And I think one of the things that we've heard loud and clear, and one of the reasons we invested a lot on the extensibility side of our SaaS applications was we recognized the power of what PeopleSoft had provided around App Designer and this customization. So we set out on the SaaS side to be able to allow a great deal of extensibility, adding regions, adding fields, personalizing the page for a region or a country, a business unit, a role, extending with new additional fields on any given page, doing a lot of the things that we saw customization, PeopleSoft customers customizing using App Designer. We tried to handle a lot of that in a way in the cloud where you could configure, tailor, personalize the system, but you could never customize it. And so we wanted to we're never going to get as close to building a custom application, but we wanted to get far enough along so you could tailor and personalize the system. And so that's one of the challenges that we took on early on the cloud. And I think it's paid dividends in some of our larger, more complex customers that really need some level of tailoring. And I'll just give a few examples of some of the large customers like Marriott, who has tailored the application not only to meet some of their internal needs, but some of their represented worker union, requirements, and they've had to configure the system and tailor it to meet some of those needs. So we've done that, and we learned some lessons, some benefit, but try to take away some of the pain. Do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, the customization. There were a few big areas that we've been trying to address. That are real big pain points for PeopleSoft customers. One is the upgrades and patching. We've gotten much better at that because of the PeopleSoft Update Manager and selective adoption, but they still have to upgrade people tools. They still have to, there still is patching work in the applications, but we've done a lot, but it's not SaaS for sure. Number two is the user experience. We've really helped the user experience and modernizing it with Fluid. The one that we've been trying our best to address with frameworks and things like that is customization. But at the end of the day, the fact that so many of our customers have customizations and probably won't be able to ship those all in PeopleSoft to frameworks that protect them is their single biggest issue, is their single biggest challenge. And so, there's very few customers out there, I think, except the ones that have already moved to the cloud, who understand what a vast difference it is between being on a code line that is exactly the same as everyone else's, so that we can manage that with almost no effort at all, versus one that's different for every single customer, right? And that's ultimately probably one of the biggest differences in terms of us managing the software about a SaaS and non-SaaS, is that it all looks the same. It's magnitudes easier to do. And I think, it was one of those areas where when I talked to PeopleSoft customers early on in the cloud days, they were concerned, and understandably so. But if you look at the PeopleSoft customers who've moved to the cloud now, they were some of our most customized. Some of them have been some of our most customized customers we've ever had, right? And if as you mentioned, Marriott, the Marriotts of the world can move and not customize and be successful and be happy, then others can as well, right? And so it's one thing to think about it conceptually. It's another thing to see customers who've been in the customized state, have moved to SaaS and are not customized and are successful.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, Paco and I we tease each other a lot in a good way, because we go so far back. And early on, I wouldn't say early on, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when we were getting some customers live, more complex customers live, I'd get feedback from customers. Hey, Chris, when are you going to have features like forward-looking FMLA in the product? Because this has been in PeopleSoft for the last 10 years, and when are you going to have it? And I'm like, I don't remember ever having that in PeopleSoft, but let me call Paco. And I called Paco, and he either knew or checked with his team. He's like, yeah, we never built that. And I think what had happened is partners were so good that they knew if there were any gaps that they needed to fill or specific industry requirements, they would create these extensions themselves and deliver it as part of customization. So on the SaaS side, we couldn't do that. So we've had to build out functionality where maybe some of the on-premise systems didn't quite finish or go that last mile. We don't have some of that luxury. So some of the features that we've been told that PeopleSoft has delivered, and when we go back in, not a ton, but there have been a number of them where they just weren't finished. So it's just kind of a funny story, and we talk about that.
Well, that's one of the things that makes our job so hard, because I've also got some responsibility on a SaaS product line outside of PeopleSoft, and we're the team that when there's something that the customer absolutely needs, it's on us, right? And so the pressure, I can tell you, the pressure from a software development standpoint in the SaaS world is much, much higher, right? We have much more accountability to the success of our customers, not just because we have to build the features, but we have to maintain the product. We have to make sure the product is running. We have to make sure that it's working. We have to make sure that the upgrades are smooth, because if they're not, it's our fault, right? It's on us. And so it's way more pressure and it's way more responsibility from a software provider standpoint in the SaaS world.
And I would say, that's positive, but but on the positive side, the relationships that I have or we have with customers on the SaaS side are like nothing. I wouldn't say nothing, but more rare when I was when I ran on-premise products and you do. I'm telling you, you're going to hear from Hilton in the panel. I think we have JP Morgan Chase that's in the panel, MetLife that's in the panel after, and we're an extension of their team, whether they're in the line of business or whether they're in IT. They have to rely on us if there's a critical issue, or if there's they're running a critical payroll and off-cycle process, and they want to ensure that everything is perfect. They have my number or my team's number. We have a center of excellence team, but that trust that you have to build up, and them knowing that if anything goes wrong, that they can call you night or day and get an answer, builds up great relationships. And I feel like the relationships, and hopefully you'll hear it, and I'm sure you will when we talk on the panel after, the relationships that we have are ones that are built in being in the battle together and coming through it and being successful together. And it's great. It's been great.
Well, and that's one of the questions I do get from customers. PeopleSoft was always very much the user communities and the advisory boards and the this community. And so they ask that, one of the things I get asked are, so when we get to cloud, what does that engagement look like? Like, what's the community look like? So as you said, yeah.
I'll jump in on that one. I mean, a couple of things. I don't want to. I got to be careful because I don't want to oversell and say how great the cloud is, but we've been able to do a few things that was just harder to do when customers were on either different releases or different patch levels, or just the differences make it really hard to have customers share things like reports, or share things like business rules, or share things that or ask, I just got this update and everybody got it at the same time, and here are some of the new features. Is anybody else taking advantage of these? Or how should I do this in the system? So one of the things that I'm probably most proud about is we created a customer community called Customer Cloud Connect, where all of our SaaS customers, including obviously our HCM SaaS customers, can come together, and it's a discussion forum. It's a idea lab where you can recommend ERs, and then customers give them crowdsource them, give them thumbs up, thumbs down. So it's totally visible about hey, this has 25 customers that want this feature, and we love that. I mean, then that's something we put as a priority. But they can communicate with each other. Partners are on there answering questions. We have a reports area where customers post, shells of reports that you can take and drop into the system, and that type of community. And we have, I think, 55,000 members now. So it's a really popular place to get updates on the product, to see, low level how to configure certain parts of the system. But what's nice is customers can collaborate together. And what I love to see is customers answering each other's questions about how the product works. And so that type of forum is harder when you have to ask, 3 or 4 qualifying questions, what release are you on, what patch level are you on, and have you, taking these latest things. So, that's some of the advantages of being a little bit more consistent, everybody on the same release, getting the updates at the same time and collaborating. But we still have similar forums like PeopleSoft did. We still have cabs, and customers get together and talk about what features they want. They meet each other. So there is definitely some similarities. Customers know each other. They come together and they talk about hard problems to solve. And so that's where it's similar. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've gotten some of those benefits, but when we moved away from the major application upgrades, most customers are now on the same release, but it's still, even though we're all in the same release, customers don't all have the same capabilities. So, but even just that has made the relevance of the engagement much higher. So I can just imagine everyone having all the same features and being on the same product, not customized either, because that's the other thing. If one customer's customized something, they're talking to a customer that hasn't. Oftentimes, the customer doesn't even know it's customized, right? It's just been there forever.
Exactly.
So everyone being on product that they know is exactly the same product as that everyone else has creates a context and relevancy that does make a big difference. So yeah, no, I've heard good things about the community and what I've seen from customers. I keep looking for all those PeopleSoft customers that are unhappy on the cloud, and I haven't found them. They're happy. They're happy.
2 tough questions for you. Okay, well, one tough one. So, and so I'm asking you versus asking me. So if the cloud is so great, why aren't all PeopleSoft customers? Why haven't they all moved?
And I think there's, every company has the culture, and so it depends on both the kind of the company culture, right? There's always going to be those companies or institutions that want to be leading edge, want to be kind of on the forefront, want to be early adopters, and those are the ones that have already gone, right? The companies that are at that, because we're beyond the early adopters on cloud, right? We've gotten to the point where we're in the kind of the bulk of the wave, I think, where we have a lot of customers adopting it. But the early adopters, and then, but we've got customers like the U.S. Army who's implementing right now. They're in implementation. They're deploying out to the troops. They're not going to stop and change platforms, even if there are advantages to those platforms because of the criticality of when it's delivered and when it's delivered. And there are still some, there still are some customers, not that many, but there are some that their business is so vastly different that they do have to basically create whole custom things that we don't have. And obviously the military is a good example of that. But I think most customers, the reason they haven't moved yet is that they're still nervous, right? They're nervous and they're afraid of taking on, we've all been through ERP implementations, HCM implementations, and we know that, new implementations, there's always work, there's risk, there's stress, there's all that stuff. And so I think to some degree, there's a hesitancy to sign up. There has been a hesitancy to sign up for that. I think now that we can have them, point at and have them talk to a lot of PeopleSoft customers who've done it successfully. Yep. Big ones, small ones, all industries, all product areas, all parts of the world. I think, a great example is payroll, right? I mean, what we heard early on was, well, we think you can run talent in the cloud. Okay, that makes sense. Well, maybe we'll put performance management or compensation management out there, and maybe even HR, but no way, payroll, no way. We're not comfortable moving payroll out there, right? And yep. Now look at some of the customers we have that move from PeopleSoft to cloud payroll. They're running it in the cloud. So I think as more customers adopt, the customers that aren't the early adopters are going to look at them and say, they've done it, we can do it, and we're going to move. And it may take, I don't know how long it's going to take. Some customers still a long time, but it's happening.
Yeah. So we have organization announcements, and we announce everything. If a new customer went live, a new sales win, keep the troops motivated, and we've had some tremendous go lives. And I always get a note back from Paco. So when JP Morgan Chase went live, when American Express went live, when Goldman Sachs went live, some of the big ones just recently, but large ones like Marriott and really complex, hourly unionized workforce, Paco will say congratulations or wow, that's pretty good, so we get this, even at times, it's shocking to see a complex organization that we know customized the system very, very heavily, able to get live in the cloud. And, 3, 4, like Paco says, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we didn't have that level of configurability. We didn't have the confidence that we have now. We're reeling off large, complex customers that are getting onto the cloud in a very standard way, over and over again. You're going to hear from a few of them. I think JP Morgan Chase is on, and Hilton's on, and MetLife is on in the panel next. And you're going to hear their stories about how they've gotten there and how they've moved and how they've reduced, removed the customizations. Yeah.
It makes it easier for me too, because, look, we've obviously, we believe that ultimately having our customers move to the cloud is going to be better for them. It's better for us, but it's better for them. But I'm a pretty honest guy. And so back in the early days when customers that were big and complex would ask me, is it ready for me to move? It was a hard question to answer and be completely honest. And even though I had to be, and I just said, sometimes maybe not yet, right? Or maybe think about moving just a piece, or just moving component was what we would always say. The nice thing is now I can answer that question. You can feel completely comfortable with the answers. The product is, the service effectively are ready for you to move. You as a company may not, because you need to make sure you've got the right governance model. You've got to have support for this top down. It can't be something that is, it's got to have support from the whole organization to make any change, whether it's cloud or not, any change. But we can confidently say the products, the service is ready, and it's just a matter of adopting it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think we've moved past the point
Yeah.
of just those types of questions. I think we've come to a really good place. Okay, two more differences. So one of them, they asked about kind of the differences in upgrades and maintenance. I'll give just a little view on the cloud, and I know we talked a little bit about how PeopleSoft can do that, but I'll give a little view on the cloud because I think it is a little bit different. And then you can jump in with kind of how it's done in PeopleSoft. So how SaaS works now is we have basically 4 updates a year, and we call them updates, not upgrades, because it's a combination of new features, a combination of any fixes that we have, and we have 4 of those a year. So customers that move to our cloud 4 times a year for between 4 and 6 hours of downtime now, and we continue to make progress on that. So 24 hours of planned downtime get updated. And they leave on Friday night, come in Saturday morning, and there's all the new code is laid down, and they have an update, and we do it on stage first, and they do it on production. They have a couple weeks to do any regression testing that they want. And then we roll it into production. Now, when they take new features is up to them, is up to you. So new features, just like you would in on-premise, you have to go configure them, turn them on, they're secured off. So you're not coming in and the system has changed, but things are coming at you more quickly, and you have to plan more readily on these updates that you're going to get 4 times a year and plan your work around those. But again, as you're rolling out small features, you can do those quickly. But if you want to roll out learning or recruiting or a broader module, you have to plan just like you would uptaking any other larger module. So it's a little bit different from the time frame. And all customers, we do have a couple different ways, but essentially within a 6-week period, 100% of customers are on the same update at the same time, and then we roll over into the next update. So 4 updates a year, 4 to 6 hours of downtime, and we keep that rolling. So it's a little bit different mindset, how you have to think about it, but it's how SaaS works. So I don't know if you want to touch on.
Yeah, and because I've been obviously involved in the SaaS stuff as well. The other thing I guess I'd point out is you have the flexibility in terms of how often you take so the updates in between the updates effectively. When you're in implementation mode and you're looking for things that changes you need, you may want them more frequently. You can basically turn on getting monthly updates or even weekly updates when you need them. So as customers are going live and doing projects, they may be getting updates more frequently. As they get into production, they want updates not as frequently, and they go to the quarterly updates. It's nice because they can dial it up and dial it back all the way to the point where they're only getting the quarterly. So it gives a lot of flexibility, both in terms of being responsive to get something quickly, but also not getting things too much. But it's great. I mean, there's no way we can do it, as much as we've tried to do on the PeopleSoft site. We've tried to really get as kind of as close as we can. There's no way to get anywhere near that because we're doing the work, and we're applying this to thousands of customers at a time in a weekend. So that scale is just not something that you can replicate anywhere else. And we've got fleets, we've got teams of people. I mean, this is we have professional teams managing this on the SaaS side. So yeah, it's probably one of the most fundamental differences, and that leads to a whole bunch of other benefits.
So last question I get asked all the time, and you can jump in as well, is on payroll, kind of the differences, what we support. So we've scaled back a little bit in the number of countries that we support in the cloud. How the PeopleSoft support 20 plus countries? 17
or something now.
17 countries. We're supporting about 10 in the cloud. Probably the biggest, I would say, gaps between what PeopleSoft supports and what we support. Native payrolls are France and Germany, two payrolls that we're not delivering in SaaS, but we're delivering all the other big ones, certainly North America, Canada, Mexico, United Kingdom, some in Middle East, China. So we have about 10 payrolls that we're delivering globally. Our strategy has been to deliver in SaaS kind of payrolls where there's large populations of our install-based customers, and so where they can get a cost savings from having payroll in-house. Certainly, we're looking to add, additional payrolls. We've talked about France, we've talked about India, we've talked about Australia. Some of the other Philippines has been another one that's popular that we're looking at. But we try to reduce the number of payrolls and also invest in a more real-time interface to global payroll providers, whether it's ADP or others. So it's not a batch feed. It's a, employee changes their national identifier or changes their marital status. We automatically can, real-time update that downstream system. So we've tried to not only consolidate and deliver payrolls where we had the largest employee populations from our customers. We also tried to improve the global interface that we had, even early on in the cloud to becoming more real time. So a little bit similar strategy, but a little bit, more focused than I guess PeopleSoft and even eBusiness Suite was.
Well, and what I mentioned before is the ability to run, in North America in particular, which is where some of our biggest customers are. They're running payroll, to run North America payroll and not have at scale, at large scale. That's, yep. I mean, I feel like that's something that probably sets us apart in the cloud application, HCM cloud space.
And I always get asked this question. Then we actually are going to go to the panel. We've been unplugged for a long time. How many PeopleSoft customers have moved to our HCM cloud? And it's in the hundreds, well over 300-400 PeopleSoft customers across all sizes, from the very large like JP Morgan Chase to medium sized like Hearst and even small customers have moved. So it's across the board, and global customers have moved. So we have a really good population across different industries and geographies and size of customers. Some running payroll, some not running payroll. So we're really confident in the conversion and how we get it over. We have some programs to help. We have one called SOAR that helps move some setups and configurations over. We have some customers that have run, as part of their implementation. First wave, they got HR and some talent live, left payroll on PeopleSoft, and then moved that in wave 2. So we have a bunch of different ways customers have deployed and gotten to a full cloud deployment. So all of that can be talked through by, the system integrators out there, our own system integrator, Oracle Consulting. They know all the different ways that you can move. So hopefully this was helpful. It's always great to catch up with Paco and talk to him live. We have a great panel that's coming up next, some great customers, and we'll head over there now. So thanks again, Paco.
Sure. Bye, Chris.